Uh, I'm president of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Saints. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We are here to review Late Night with the Devil. And what an interesting movie this is. It stars, let's see, David Desmet, Laura Gordon, Ian Bliss, Faisal Bazzi, Ingrid Turrell, Rice Aturi. And it's directed by, let's see,
Couple of
Cameron.
brothers.
Yeah, two brothers, both write and direct this movie. Um, so, Patrick, my friend, I watched this. This feels like the Dark Shadows movie we never got.
It certainly is it's a type of Dark Shadows they never made. Now, what makes you make that comparison?
The moment they did a late night talk show with the devil, I could see Dan Curtis would have wanted to attempt at something like this with DS. I mean, I could see Dan Curtis wanting to do something like this, probably with at least the DS cast. As much as he probably wanted to do a Christmas Carol, he would have wanted to do this with them.
Yeah.
And I do think now this kind of thing, like their plot of this of ratings affecting the show, and they're desperate for ratings, reminded me of the 90s, how everything was about ratings and every show did everything they could to get a rating, from Jerry Springer to pro wrestling. I mean, you name it, everything. And
Now,
this,
Jewel, was PBS all you watched?
no, not all.
Okay. You loosened up. You backed away from the intellectual programming at some point, because that's all you've been talking about so far.
Well, I did listen. I did watch Mr. Rogers sometimes when I was, little.
What did you
But
watch him do? Now, was this seriously though? What did you watched his television program?
yes, I bet. Yeah.
You didn't like send him notes saying I saw what you did or anything like that.
No, no,
Okay.
no. So this guy, he's this talk show host, Jack Del Rey. He's married, but his wife gets sick of cancer and she's dying. And his highest rated show was the one she was on, and then he goes into this deep dive of downward spiral, and
Yeah,
the
she
last
dies. She dies after
yeah,
that.
she dies because of and he goes into this downward spiral, and man, it only gets worse from there, because in every way this is sort of a weird found footage movie.
It tries to be, and
Yeah,
then it backs away from that premise. I don't know, when it's no longer convenient for the filmmakers. How did you feel about that? Because it stops being found footage at a certain point.
well, here's my take on that. I don't think this is ever. I think for us, it's found footage, but for Jack Del Rey, or whatever you want to call
That's his
him,
name, yeah.
it's happening as is, if that makes sense. It's
Sort of, sort of. The thing is that at a certain point, a movie has to make up its mind which universe
yeah,
it's dealing with. If maybe they had Jack watching the found footage years
yeah,
later, and then it cuts back to him watching it, and it stops, and they said, what happens next? We don't have any film on that. And he just says, oh, things. And then it sort of closes in on his eye, and you're there from a totally different angle.
yeah.
That, from a filmmaking point of view, I understand. But it feels a little bit like the movie wants to have it both ways.
I
And the
yes,
whole idea of found footage is that you're observing this, and oh my God, I can't believe this is happening in real life.
yeah.
Um, but you can't have that. Well, I guess you can. They did it, but I don't think it makes any sense for it to suddenly be inside Jack's head and so on. It's like, well, who are we as the audience? What are we seeing?
this almost feels, this would be like if Barnabas were standing outside the parallel time room and he was seeing himself in a weird way. Like
Yeah.
that's sort of how it feels to a degree. Like it starts off as found footage, but by the end of this movie, and I'm not trying to jump to that, he's standing there. The daggers through the little girl's heart because she was possessed by the devil, and there
That's
was all the
9/10 of the law.
right. There was all these things happening too around him. People were dying, and finally he ended her life, and he's just standing there, and they don't pull the camera back and have you show him watching. They just have him standing there like it just happened
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
moment. I do think to a degree maybe it still is, maybe it's something that at that moment in time is happening, but we as the viewer, like what I'm trying to say, are watching it, but it's weird. I'm trying to explain it, but it's like really, it's a great
I,
movie.
I, there are a lot of great things in it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great things in it. I wish it had been more consistent, as you know, in its tone, because at a certain point, when it broke with itself, it lost me as a viewer because I had been playing by a certain set of rules watching it. And the essence, again, the essence of found footage is this idea of, I can't believe I'm seeing this.
Yeah.
It's taking place in real life. And because of that, we have, expectation, and nothing too crazy is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it does, it's footage that's been found by a small group, like Paranormal Activity.
Right.
It's a movie where we don't really know who's found the footage. Certainly, they've edited it together, but this is not an archive of a national television show.
Yeah.
So uh, that's a big difference. And I have agreed, you sort of make a contract with the movie when you go in. It's like, this is the type of film. Yeah, here's the cat. Everything, see, okay, go away. Um, so everybody gets weird if you do that to a dog. You put the dog out of the room, they'll go, oh, dog. The cat gets on your nerves. You throw the cat in another room. Nobody cares. You also don't have to take a cat to like 6 months of obedience training to teach it not to be an asshole. The cat basically just kind of more or less gets it. Uh, Again, Scott Dickers of The Onion said a dog is like Lenny from Of Mice and Men, but with deadly fangs and no bowel control. And I think that's largely true. So but yeah, it loses me because you're dealing with two different movies. And
Mm-hmm.
if we are existing in a universe where this happens and where cameras filmed it,
Yeah.
even filmed his hallucinations through the power of Satan magic or something like that, you're dealing with a world that is fundamentally different.
Yeah.
You're dealing with Nobel Prizes handed out. You're dealing with, the ascendancy of the Catholic Church to being a monolithic world power, if things like this are established. And so the movie, to exist in our universe, pretty much has to stop at a certain point if we're watching found footage. Or it has to start with Jack or someone else watching the found footage, and then we kind of go back. So that bookends it. And the found footage is like the petroleum based sweetness in a Hydrox cookie. Um, is something like that. But you you just can't have both. Um, or we are existing in a universe
Yeah.
where this has changed, because this is in the 70s. This isn't now.
Right.
This was 40 years ago. And so if we're accepting that this 50 years ago, and so if we're accepting that this happened 50 years ago, we have had 50 years of filmed, absolute evidence that the devil is out there, makes a girl's head split in two, kills an audience
Yeah.
and everybody there, and makes the host stab a little girl, and all hell has broken loose. Now I'll tell you something. If you want to make that movie where we are now 50 years the inheritors of this, and cut to outside the studio and to see what the world has become,
Yeah.
in a world where this was absolutely established beyond a shadow of a doubt, because all religion it's all based on, well, I swear I'll feel it, or well, I
Mm.
heard the burning bush but no one else can, and it's a mystery of faith, and I don't mean to mock these things,
Right.
but they are real tough if you are not the person who sees the burning bush,
Yeah.
or who feels the power of God or whatever. For the rest of us, we have to live with this. Well, you got to take my word for it, and because someone whips out the word faith, which has so much baggage around it, the rest of us are just supposed to kind of go, okay. And I don't think that's fair. And that's real tough, because if I tell you that there's a dragon in your closet, you're going to want me to give you evidence. And if I say, well, Joel, you must not like me, or you must not trust me or believe in me, you must take this on faith, you would say, Patrick, you're joking with me. And if I got angry and indignant about it, if I got really angry and indignant, said, our forefathers said there was a dragon in that closet, or whatever,
Right. Right.
you would think I was crazy.
Yeah.
And if I said, here are moral precepts based on the dragon in your closet that you must trust me exists, you would say, get the hell out of my house. Um, and so, what we now have, though, what's really cool as an idea based on this movie, is 50 years of a culture where
Right.
religion no longer needs the crutch of faith,
Yeah.
where religion can say, Hal, we got a bunch of dead bodies, and you have forensic evidence that has been viewed by expert upon expert, and you still have some living witnesses. How much more evidence do you need? And the answer is none. NASA would be devoted. The JPL would quit. It would be devoted. CERN, the super collider, everything that all of it would be devoted to essentially the return of God, giving us now through the devil, but I mean, they have a contract or something, um giving us the kind of evidence that was freely given out in the Old Testament, flood and disaster after flood and disaster. That's a pretty freaking cool idea, because the thing that atheists always go around with is, well, where's the burning bush, where's the why are we getting miracles now? Well, imagine a universe where God says, you know what, I'm tired of hearing this, Richard Dawkins. Bzzzt. There's a burning bush. Bzzzt. There's a guy coming back from the grave on a cross, or in the cave after being on the cross. Bzzzt. Here's some loaves and fishes, buy an umbrella. Serious. I'm being totally serious.
Right.
That's a hell of a movie. You want to do that movie where biblical miracles start happening and there is no question as to the authorship? I'll be on the front row.
Yeah.
And this movie could have gone there. Okay, I'm done.
I think it does a lot of great things. The one thing it does, art does imitate life a bit here, because what you have is you have a medium who comes out, but another thing you have come out is a magician who's looking
Yeah.
to who not just expose the medium, but expose the woman and the girl who's saying she communicates with Satan. Little fun fact for those who don't know: Harry Houdini, when he was alive, went around busting fake mediums. So they are sort of taking that and applying it here. Um,
Well, they weren't mediums. They were wearing corsets. And that's where the bust comes in also, because it was kind of scooped up.
but the guy who's the medium, he starts throwing up, and that they learn that he dies, which Jack Delroy, he doesn't want that spread around, but the guy who's part of his band, his announcer, says, yeah, didn't you hear he died? He tells the magician, yeah, that guy died. Didn't you hear? And I love that part. I love the magician's look on his face. He's like, wait, what did you say? But I do love the hypnotism trick that the magician pulls in the movie, where he says he's hypnotizing him, and he asked the audience, how many of you actually saw what I was doing and were hypnotized? And a few people do raise their hands, but the camera catches everything of him
Yes,
hypnotized.
that's the
Yeah,
first place where, and the movie I think could have stuck with this a little bit more, where it plays with the idea of the audience, including you
yeah,
watching it 50 years later in the audience, still get hypnotized by this.
yep.
But then with a different context, when you go back and look at it, you see that it's an illusion. That, Jewel, that was you're right to point that out. That was a very clever filmmaking trick.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I love the chairlifting thing. We've seen stuff like that before, but I did like the girl in this movie does give a great performance in
It's
the
terrific.
possession angle. I mean, really, the host. This I'm gonna throw something out there. This guy, this actor, this David guy. Every time I looked at him, I saw a bit of Jonathan Fred in him.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. Yeah, he's got a Jonathan Fritian seizure
Yeah, I bet.
kind of vibe, but without Hervé Villechaize.
Yeah, he really sort of like the hairstyle, a little bit of his face. I did love his performance because I love how they did the behind the scenes with this as well, like behind the camera and in front of the camera, which was really great storytelling by the writers and
Mm-hmm.
directors, the brothers, if you will. They did a really good job because that's something you don't really see in real life talk shows too much anymore. You don't see behind the scenes, but here they're showing you the cameramen are screaming around like, yeah, I don't see this, I don't see this, and I love how the announcers like, hey, do you whatever? Can you give me my line? This that. So you see the fumblings and bumblings backstage, but in front of the camera, everything's at first going normally, and then everything goes to shit quite literally. What did
Yeah.
you think of all the cool effects we did get? Because they were practical for the most part.
um. Yeah, I mean, they were good. It was good special effects. I mean, they were good. When we get to the Devil Girl head split moment at the end,
Yeah,
which is like out of the thing, really.
yeah.
It has a very, it's sort of like a Dayglow thing, um, which I heard your wife obtained recently. But seriously, I don't know what I was talking about there. It's from one of those machines, she works at a place with like a sheets, right sheets
She works at Sheets.
and sheets, yeah, yeah. Anyway, and novelties. So, but I thought the effect at that point almost was too good.
Yeah,
Uh, and it was so mad. One of the issues is that it was so magical. You couldn't really ascribe anything else to it. And
yeah,
like when we stop it and he sees the ghost of his wife on the video footage.
yeah,
I think one of the cool things with a lot of found footage stuff is the idea that this could be in someone's head.
yeah,
One of the things that makes Paranormal Activity work so well is that you never see the what's its you see its claw marks in the flour that's on the floor and things like that. But could something else have made that? Yeah.
yeah,
Could something have dragged her out of bed, just out of the reach of the camera? Could someone have dragged her foot out? Could this be showmanship on the part of the couple in Paranormal Activity? Yeah. you know, is it a ghost in Blair Witch or is it something
yeah,
else? You don't really know. And that's the brilliance of found footage. When you get too magical, you go someplace else. The more practical the effects were in the movie, the more I liked them.
yeah,
Um, and here's the a cool thing about horror movies involving faith is that if you do leave some ambiguity as to, is this supernatural or is this in their minds? Then it becomes a matter of faith. And of course, the journey that the hero there always takes is that they have to embrace the vision of faith to deal with this devil creature
Yeah.
business, and that's okay. That's a good story. Um, you know, on the other hand, if you're dealing with more spectacular effects, like The Exorcist does, one of the things that really makes The Exorcist work is, great songs.
Yeah.
Great song. I don't know if there are any songs in The Exorcist, but it's a funny idea. Jackie Gleason, of course, and Burt Reynolds' byplay in The Exorcist is a lot of fun. As they're trying to get that communion wine back from never mind. Okay, so the thing that makes that work is that Blatty wanted a documentary level filmmaker
Yeah.
to give that movie a straightness, just a very straight shooting one level of reality to another, to another, to another, without an orchestra sawing away and suddenly there are lights sparking everywhere. Everything's just very organic. It's very real. It's very in the moment. Light doesn't shoot out of Reagan's eyes, but welts do appear on her body saying, "Help me." That that really grabs me. So even when you mix universes, I think it's a matter of taste, and they certainly tasted some pea soup in that one.
Yeah.
It's a matter of taste as to how you pull it off and how you grab an audience with it.
I think too, to sort of compare it to The Exorcist a bit, that with
Yeah,
the with The Exorcist, all those things that mostly happen in The Exorcist, you could sort of somewhat see happening in real life. Young girl,
sure, sure. Go to the Tennessee Valley Fair,
yeah,
on
and
closing night. Whew.
then with this, the one thing to get to your point, I wish they would have done. Don't get no one get us wrong. We enjoyed the hell out of this movie.
I had a good time too.
Like, I wish when they do pull back the camera to see who's watching it, they have four people in the chair watching this, and have the names Kimmel, like the modern talk shows, and this is why we script talk show hosts now. This is why we script late night television and shut it off. Like, have that little lore, like, a bit.
Yeah,
Maybe it would have
yeah.
been too much, but who knows? I do.
That's why you have that 4 second delay.
Yeah. Yes.
4 seconds for the devil.
I do love how they did. This is beautiful shot. I love the acting in this is superb. From David on down, everybody did a great job. I love how the guy who's playing the magician, the girl tries to point out, she goes, "I didn't hypnotize the audience." What he's trying to say to her is, you may not have had a watch, but you had your words, and words can hypnotize as easy as this watch. That's what
Yeah.
he's saying, suggestion, power suggestion.
Yeah. I mean, he's based on James Randi and what Randy's career was all about.
Yep.
And Randy's a great hero. He's a great cultural hero. But what Randy's career was all about is you say you're doing this thing psychically. I ask you to do two things. One, you have to prove it under controlled circumstances that the impossible is happening.
Yep.
So, and you can establish, he even told the people who were applying for this $1 million grant, uh, he said, you can determine for yourself what the controls are.
Yep.
We're not going to impose them on you. You come up with that. And so he had that, but then also he basically said, look, if I can recreate this, or if I can create this through
Yeah.
simple common stage magic
Yep.
and fool you, then that's a lot more believable than there's some weird psychic force that
Yep.
no one can prove, no one can measure, no one can recreate. I mean, because that's always the issue. What's more likely? Is it more likely that this bit of chicanery that we can reproduce is creating this effect? Or is it more likely that some sort of supernatural force that cannot be measured, that we cannot reach, that we cannot apply any of the rules that we use in law, in science, in medicine, in parenting, in anything.
Yeah.
That somehow we're just going to say, well, in this case, Miss Cleo is right.
Yeah.
Well, come on, guys. So that's all Randy was really doing, and the guy he was going up against in the movie is sort of based on a figure named Uri Geller.
Yeah.
And Uri Geller was this spoon-bending Israeli who was fleecing corporations and individuals of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, Randy did a lot of good, because if you're going to see a psychic or something like that, and you understand that it's entertainment,
Yeah.
and you maybe in your heart you want to believe, almost like, one of those weird adults you see going to see Santa or something at a corporate party, and maybe in a little part of the back of their mind they say, well, if it were true, wouldn't this be fun? That's fine. But if you're forking over, your life savings to these charlatans, and they are taking it, this is fraud. And you have people like John Edward and so on and so forth who are just defrauding people, and you got real problems. That's why Randy went after faith healers. He even wrote a book called The Faith Healers. He went after I forget who it was, but it was one of the big ones, and he got a radio scanner that got his wife feeding him all of the clues and cues that they had filled out on their little cards, which is why he was able to do all of that. So the movie kind of goes after Randy, and I don't think it's a very fair portrayal. That was the sort of thing where it's like, you know, as a man of faith, I suspect you get real tired of so many religious figures being portrayed in a cliched, kind of thing. Can't we just have one who's a normal guy, who's a decent, normal person? Because most clergy are decent, normal people.
Yeah.
But movies don't do that. Well, I kind of had that experience watching this. It's like, yeah, Randy finally makes it into a movie, sort of,
Yeah.
and he gets painted as a schmuck. Oh, well.
Well, from my view, I didn't see him as a schmuck, as more so because to me, like, you're right, he is Randy to a group, but he's also a bit like Houdini to a degree too. Like, because Houdini was quoted once. He once told a medium. He told him, "You're the best ventriloquist I've ever seen." And he knew they were fake, but he knew how they. Because I mean, he showed every illusionary. He did every illusionary trick imaginable. He knew how it worked. He knew how it didn't. He knew what you could do, what you couldn't get away with. So
certainly in Alabama.
Yeah,
and you can't get away with in Alabama.
You're right. And the guy in the movie, to your point, is more like Randy to agree, because he does go around the audience and they said, yeah, they had us filling out questions and stuff. And he's like, oh, okay. He picks up on that.
Well, Randy was able to, do all of those things and yet remain likable. Yeah. He was never adversarial to the audience. Yeah. What Randy specialized in would be simple demonstrations and tests, and getting the audience to say, oh, look what they have pulled over on us.
Yeah.
They say, these people have all pulled a fast one over on all of us, and now is our chance to get back. Man. Rather than, you fools, believing this, well, I will be smarter than you once again. Ha ha. Randy never did that.
I think an example, like certain areas, like for example, when people go out to Tombstone, Arizona, and they take pictures, there's always the little orbs in the pictures. And I just think, honestly, that's from the atomic bomb being tested out near that way. I mean, because after years,
Yeah, I would have to look that up. I mean, I have every confidence there's a rational explanation for those things. But
the what is it? Boot Hill Cemetery, the graveyard outside Tucson, Arizona. When people take pictures there's all these little orbs in the pictures. They can't take a decent picture. Well, New Mexico or wherever Oppenheimer tested the bomb, it's not like it's not too terribly far from there. If you
Sure.
prevailing winds, um, I do
Can I?
think. Go ahead, sure. Sorry.
No. You finish, and then I was going to
I
ask
do
you
think
something.
there is logical explanation for most things. Now, are there things that aren't explainable? Sure. The disappearance of Tom Messick is fucking phenomenally unexplainable. But
I okay, politely. I would counter that it has not been explained,
right,
and that there are lots of things. Think of magnetism for so much of human history
right,
as being something that had not yet been explained. Everything has a cause. Every
right,
effect has a cause. Just because we haven't been able to measure it yet or see it yet doesn't mean it doesn't have a cause. Let's talk about the Boot Hill example that you gave, Boot Hill Cemetery example that you gave. Okay, so these are the pieces of information that we're not getting. A, no one is getting rich or even getting 15 minutes of fame off pictures from Boot Hill Cemetery with no glowing dots in them.
right, right,
So you don't know what the percentage of photographs with glowing orbs to non-glowing orbs is. That's
right.
number one. Uh, Number two, um, are you an expert in photography and
No,
in lighting? Okay, neither am I, and anyone who sees my photos will agree with that statement. Um, I do know that you're dealing with lots of layers of lenses and lots of layers of little bits of glass, and that when you're dealing with all of that, there can be all kinds of tiny reflections and refractions and so on and so forth that operate, because we're also not talking about all of the places where you know the right aperture creates bokeh and creates all sorts of little specks of light here and there. um so in other places, but
no,
those other places, like your Aunt Sally's tomato garden, are not particularly uh uh notable for a moment of great and romantic violence. So the little orbs appear in there, it's like, there's something weird with the lens. So those are also the things. And I sometimes I feel rotten for pointing this stuff out, but the cool thing is that it 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 gives the world a little more honesty, and when the world has a little more honesty, you have more power in it.
no.
And it also raises the standard for what the supernatural's gonna have to do to really, establish itself, stretch out on the couch, grab the remote, and say it's here to stay. Uh, that, in other words, if we know that, oh, that's swamp gas or whatever, then when we do encounter something supernatural, we've already established all these things that it naturally has leapt over. And when that establishment happens, it will happen with a lot of truth, a lot of reliability.
Yeah. What did you think of the set design?
It was
I
it
mean,
was, it was spot on.
yeah, it
Uh,
was.
there are some places where the movie was trying just a little too hard. They did have shirts with collars that went out to the tips of the shoulders, but not that often. I kind of feel like the 70s is such an exaggerated time. Maybe don't pick the most exaggerated examples.
Right.
Take that, bring it back by a half notch, and there you'll have something that sort of passes the bullshit test.
Yeah.
um so yeah, the set was right on. Some of the costumes, just some, felt like, okay, you're trying a little hard,
Yeah.
but there were clothes like that. And
I
why
thought
would
I thought like because it takes place on Halloween, so some of the costumes are justified. The guy dressed in the devil costume,
oh
like
that
okay,
was That was, I don't know, that was a costume. That was just a man on his way home from work. Everybody's punching the time clock. The thing about working in hell is they have a good dental plan. Most people don't know that.
Oh my god! What's your favorite scene in this movie?
I liked the scenes of his co-host, who's a wonderfully kind of human and frail figure, just trying to warn him that he doesn't know what he's getting involved in, that he
Yeah,
really needs to be. I liked those scenes a lot. They read as having a lot of heart,
yeah,
and yeah.
and they feel real too. They feel sincere and real. We've talked about this with like Dark Shadows. There's moments of Dark Shadows that feel so real. Quentin losing his son, right?
Yeah.
Like him telling him, "Hey, you don't know what you're getting into," felt very real.
It did, and there's just enough blandness to that performer
Yeah,
that it reads as extra real.
yeah.
He doesn't have it in him to get histrionic, to get really wild. He's being as straight as he can with his friend.
I like the footage of the little girl being possessed, and I love how they did it on stage, directing it, writing it. The chair of levitation, it's a bit old. I've seen chair of levitation in other movies. I I get why they did that trick because they had her tied down. But the real top, I think, was the magician doing the hypnosis. I love that. I
That
think
was a really cool sequence.
that was like badass scene. Um, the whole movie itself was just fascinating. I did like how the co-host was afraid of worms, and the magician exposes it.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't expecting that in this movie at all. I mean,
It
because there's sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it feels like that was the point where the filmmakers are really at the height of their filmmaking power.
Yeah,
And I wish, in the development stage of this, a producer, someone had said, "Boys, quit while you're ahead. This is really, you've got to do something very different, and don't go all 80 Spielberg with it. Maybe try something else. I mean, I hate playing Monday morning quarterback on
right.
these things because honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I'd made the movie. I mean, I would have made some different choices. uh Again, the problem you come back to is that if you are doing something about a nationally televised event that happened, we're not talking about a lost episode, we're talking about this thing that he emphasizing, this is live, this is live, this is live. um you're dealing with a fundamentally different world,
Yeah,
in its wake.
man. I would love like a devil movie I would like to see is where somebody says, "Hey, I made a deal with the devil tomorrow. I'm gonna die," and then
Uh-huh.
you tell the story of what that deal was, and nobody believes the guy, and then somebody walks into a room in front of a bunch of people, goes up to the guy, and literally collects the guy's soul in front of a bunch of people.
What does that look like? I mean, is there like, does he take like a pineapple core and like go into his lower back, and he takes out this glowing core like Austin Powers Mojo?
No, he just touches his hand, and his entire being comes out of his body and his body evaporates. That's what that would look like to me.
It'd be it'd be wacky if that happened and the guy went, "Is that it?" Like, I don't know if I was really using that. I do I grow it back? Do you want to come back and harvest it again? Maybe this will be a thing. I feel I feel the same. I
What
think
do
my
you give?
bursitis is cleared up. Actually, it was the soul that had that issue. Yes,
What do
keep
you
it.
give this? What do you give this movie, Patrick?
I give it a 7.5, maybe an 8.
I give it a straight 10. I enjoyed
Good for
it
you.
all the way. I love a lot of it. I think it's really well done. I do think there's times it's a bit much. Like I do wish we would have got a pullback and David's character would have been the one watching this. Maybe either A, in a straight jacket, or B, just, you know, somewhere.
Jewel,
But
keep going.
but I did love the movie. It was really enjoyable. I do not regret renting the movie. It was really fun. So
I have a movie if you want to pursue sort of good scary movies of the past year or so. I have one that I think's really pretty darn good. It's called Talk to Me.
okay.
Uh, I it might have been an A24. It certainly is A24ian.
Yeah.
It's A24 esque. Um, I know some people who get pretty spooked over devilly type movies very easily. They're good audiences for it. And there's one guy who said that, oh boy, he would never let his kids watch it, that it's the most satanic, possessed, demonic film he's ever seen, and so on and so. And as filmmakers trying to make that kind of movie, that's like a standing ovation.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. It's very creepy.
Yeah. Definitely, I'll check it out. We'll have to do
When
it.
when when can we talk about it?
How's Monday? Because tomorrow we have both House on Haunted Hills. Sunday we have Doctor Who.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I need to catch up with those houses on Haunted Hills.
Yeah, tomorrow. That's at 9:45 tomorrow, my friend. Um,
Juicy.
yeah. So, is there anything you want to add about the movie before we go?
Um, no, no, no. I'll just say one thing. Um, it's when you have a dialogue between people of faith and people who are of a different path, I think something gets left out.
Yeah.
And because we've touched on this in this conversation, I think this is important to talk about. What obviously I have my beliefs, and they are no, not beliefs, my what I know, which is open to new information. um People of faith, I have found, have had experiences in their lives that are so distinct and clear that the ones I have spoken to cannot ascribe it to anything other than the presence of the Almighty. And you know, when you have people who are not of faith, um, I think the easiest way to put it is that they have not had those experiences. Now, there are those who would say, "Oh, you have, you just weren't open to hearing it," or whatever. That's always such a cop out. Come on. So for me, those visceral, very real experiences, the theophanies and so on, that hasn't happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm not closed to the universe doing something like that for me, but my beliefs are all built on that's just an experience I have not had, and I have not been able to see, reliably reproduced like other experiences are. That's not me. This may sound like a cop out, and I don't mean it to be, but that's not me having walked a mile in the shoes of someone who has had some sort of experience so distinct that they say, yes, there is a God. But I know lots of people who have had those experiences. So uh, I think secular people need to keep that in mind
Yeah.
when they are encountering people of faith, and I think that people of faith need to keep in mind that people in the secular community just haven't had those moments, and that I think both communities probably need to go a little easier on each other.
Yeah.
I say this after having ranted and raved for a half hour.
I do think, like, something Father Tony once said to me. The person who's experiencing something needs to know that they are experiencing something. That, for example, like I told you before about what I saw across from me. I don't think that was a supernatural experience when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
That's my point of view. And I told my priest about this when I was older, and he said, I don't think you had a supernatural experience either. He said, but what do you think that was? I said, I just think it was somebody messing around. I do think if if you hear a voice and no one is honest to God around you, there's no one near you, you're clearly hearing either a God or the devil, you know.
Well, no, Jewel. There are
Or
auditory
something. You're hearing something.
There are auditory hallucinations.
Right, right. There's that.
So, so I would say that's the you're either experiencing something supernatural or internal.
Yep. Yep.
You
Sorry about the
know, it's the conversations like this come out of movies like this, and they should.
Yeah. There's there's going to be many links to the Collinsport Historical Society, links to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound. Who was that guy? He said James Randi, I think.
James Randi, Randi, who was also Alice Cooper's magic consultant and was his dentist and all of that on the road. Yeah, it is Alice Cooper and was good friends with Alice Cooper. Hell of a guy. And if you look him up on YouTube, he has lots of specials.
I'm going to leave a
great man.
I'm going to leave a link to that YouTube in the description box. Patrick McCray, my friend, it has been a pleasure. I will see you tomorrow night, sir.
Thank you, Jewel.
You're welcome. Bye.